Good morning. My name is Eric Elder, and we are here at Little Galilee Camp in Clinton, Illinois, and doing a retreat for men. But if you're watching online, you're welcome to watch. It doesn't matter who you are. We're glad, and these messages will be powerful for you, I believe. This morning, we're going to hear from Jefferson Williams. He is a licensed clinical counselor. He is a pastor. He is a man who has seen God do wonders in his life. And he's a friend of mine, and I just appreciate him. He's going to speak in a few minutes. We're going to have a couple worship songs first, but he's going to talk about out of the vortex, breaking addictions, and some very personal and intimate addictions that you might have, or you might know people who are struggling. So I hope you'll watch this message. I hope you'll pass it on to other people and just encourage them that there is hope. There's real hope. And in Jesus Christ, we can do all things through him. We have Travis and Luke and Jordan and Vance, and they're going to lead us in a few worship songs here before we get started with our speaking.
You guys can stand and join us. Turn our eyes from evil things. Oh Lord, we cast down our idols. Give us clean hands. Give us pure hearts. Let us not lift our souls to another. Give us clean hands. Give us pure hearts. Let us not lift our souls to another. Oh God, let us be a generation that seeks your face, oh God of Jacob. Oh God, let us be a generation that seeks your face, oh God of Jacob. We bow our hearts, we bend our knees. Oh Spirit, come make us humble. We turn our eyes from evil things. Oh Lord, we cast down our idols. Give us clean hands. Give us pure hearts. Let us not lift our souls to another. Give us clean hands. Give us pure hearts. Let us not lift our souls to another. Oh God, let us be a generation that seeks your face, oh God of Jacob. Oh God, let us be a generation that seeks your face, oh God of Jacob. Worship his holy name. Sing like never before. Oh, my soul, I I'll worship your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing till the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship your holy name. You're rich in love and you're slow to anger. Your name is great and your heart is kind. For all your goodness I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for my heart to find. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship your holy name. Dawn that day when my strength is failing, the end draws near and my time has come. Still my soul will sing your praise unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship your holy name. Lord, I'll worship your holy name. Lord, I'll worship your holy name.
All right, Jefferson Williams, take it away.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Jefferson Williams, and I am a pastor. I give you greetings from Shenoa Baptist, and I have a wife. Her name is Maxine, just one of them, and she's 20. We've been married 26 years next month. I have 2 children. I have a 22-year-old named Joshua and a 20-year-old named Austin, so they're all about you guys' age. And I have a dog named Bucky who doesn't do any tricks, but we still love him anyway. About 10 years ago, maybe longer than that, I was eating lunch with Eric, and we were talking about our stories. And Eric said something like Eric often says, "You need to tell your story." And I think I remember saying to you, "I don't think so." And he said, "Well, maybe one day you'll tell your story." So I wanted to tell you that telling this story has been 10 years or longer in the making, maybe 12 or 13 years actually. And the only time I've ever shared this story is in Trinidad. So Eric and I were in Trinidad last summer, and so I shared it at a pastor's conference in Trinidad. So I've never actually shared this on American soil. So this will be a first. And as a counselor and as a teacher and a professor and all the things that I do, I could get up here and give you a lecture about addiction. I could give you all the stats. Particularly, I'm going to be talking about internet pornography today. And I give you the stats. The internet pornography business makes $3,000 a second. $3,000 a second. It makes more money in a year than the NBA, MLB, NFL, and NHL combined. 65% of pastors admit that they've looked at porn within the last year. The average age is now of first exposure to pornography is now 9, and it's getting lower. And the people, how do I put this? The age group that is seeking Viagra and Cialis prescriptions are 19 to 28-year-olds. That's the average age. That's the biggest group seeking help with erectile dysfunction, because we literally have a generation that has been pornified, and they cannot have sexual relations with women without help, many of them. And so I could tell you all those stories. I could go through all of that. But what I'm going to do today is I'm actually going to tell you my story. And bear with me with this, because, like I said, this is the first time I've done this in America. I want to start off with a story that John Michael Cusack tells about a young man who approached a rabbi. He said, "Help me, Rabbi. I'm a double-minded man. The law of the Lord tells me, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in want. Oh, but how I want." The rabbi's face revealed a trace of a smile, but remained silent. "And Rabbi, the law tells me that I should find rest in God alone, but oh, how my soul finds rest in everything else." Same smile, still silent. "And Rabbi, David told us to seek after only one thing, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and seek him in his holy temple. But my heart seeks after so many things." And then he lowered his voice to a whisper. "And the beauty that I secretly gaze upon brings me shame. How will I ever become a man after God's own heart when I'm so unfaithful?" And the rabbi's eyes sparkled and he began to laugh, which made the young man very angry. Listen to the story I'm going to tell you. Long ago, a skylark flew above the parched and desolate ground of the desert, and times were hard for all living creatures, and worms were not easy to come by. Even though he sang a beautiful song as he searched for his daily meals, but the difficulty in finding food grew worse, and his hunger, in his hunger, he became restless. And in his restlessness, he forgot how to sing. One day, the skylark heard an unfamiliar voice of a traveling peddler. "Worms, worms, mouth-watering worms," cried the peddler. "Come right up, get your delicious worms today." The skylark hopped closer to the peddler. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Worms today, 2 worms for a feather." At the mention of worms, he felt hungry. He suddenly understood. "My feathers are many. Surely I will not miss 2 of them." So unable to resist any longer, he plucked out 2 small feathers and surrendered them to the peddler, who, unbeknownst to him, was the devil in disguise. He had his choice of the fattest, juiciest worms he had ever seen, and he didn't have to work for them. No clawing and digging in the dirt, no getting dirty, no energy expended. He swallowed the worms and thought, such a small sacrifice for such a great reward. With his stomach full, he stepped off the perch and began to soar and sing again. The next day, he returned to the peddler and feasted on the worms till he had his full. And so it went day by day. Times were hard for all living creatures, and worms were not easy to come by for the creatures of the air. One day, after finishing his worms, he a small one here, a small one there. Really couldn't fly. He came to the he had a pile of I was riding my little yellow scooter that I was called Pastor Putt Putt at the time because I had a little yellow scooter and I'd ride it all over the county. And I was in the back roads and I used to just ride and think and pray. And I was coming around a corner, a big bend, and I saw the semi. And I knew what I could do. If I turned into the semi at the last moment, no one would believe it was that I did it on purpose. No one. The tire blew, something happened. People just assumed that it was a mechanical failure of the scooter. They'd never believe I did it on purpose. But I wanted to. I wanted to go home. I wanted to go home to a place where there was no more struggle, no more sin, and no more sadness. As I sat on the side of the road in tears, after the semi had passed, I knew that I needed help. I was 38 years old. Had a wife who loved me, kids who loved me, leader of a thriving youth ministry. I had goals. Why would I want to drive my scooter into a truck? Because I had made a deal with the devil and I didn't have any more feathers. I couldn't fly. I couldn't sing. I lived in fear and guilt and confusion and sin and sadness and shame. Especially shame. The desire of my heart was Psalm 101:2. I will walk with integrity of heart and within my house. I will not set before my eyes anything that's worthless. Integrity, wholeness. I wanted to be what everybody thought I was. I wanted to be the same person in private than I was in public. I wanted to stop being a double-minded man and have a man's heart, have a heart that beat for God alone. I didn't know what was going to happen, but all I knew was I could not live this way any longer. Something had to change, and change it did. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. I want to give you a few snapshots of my life. For those of you who are in here and are younger, this is called a picture. Okay, these are pictures, and you had a thing called a camera, and you would take the camera, and you would point it at people like this, click, and then you would take the roll of film in, and you'd wait a week, right? About a week. 3 or 4 days, and then you go pick up your pictures, right? And so this is a picture. This is a snapshot. And what I want to do is give you 10 quick snapshots of my life. Snapshot number 1. Go with me to my living room. I'm about 8 years old. I have just finished watching A Chorus Line. I'm a musical nut. I like musicals. And my mom, now that I look back on it, why did she let an 8-year-old watch that? That's a little inappropriate. But watching The Chorus Line, and I just fell in love with that. I fell in love with musical theater. I just wanted to dance and I wanted to sing. So I got up on the table. If you can imagine, I know all the words to, Hamilton, and I'm that sort of guy. So I got up on the table. I'm 8 years old, And I'm singing and I'm dancing. I'm doing what I saw, right? I'm watching Cisco pitter pat, dun, dun, dun. I can do that. And I'm singing. And I overhear my dad in the kitchen. And I hear him say to my mom, "Is that boy gay?" I didn't even know what that meant. But for the first time that I can remember, I felt an emotion that would come to define the very core of my existence. I didn't know the word for it, but my cheeks flushed, my face got hot, and I wanted to hide in a hole. I now know that as shame. I felt ashamed that I liked music and dancing. I felt ashamed that I was like this, whatever like this meant. I got off the end table and I stopped dancing. I can remember years later standing in front of the theater department at the University of Memphis, looking at all the auditions and wanting desperately to go in and to try out for something. But I couldn't, because standing in front of that building, all I felt was shame. Snapshot number 2. I'm 11 years old and I'm spending the night with my friend Jack, and we're in his older brother's room, and he lifts the mattress to reveal a treasure trove of magazines. He took one and began to flip through it, and this was a kind of magazine that actually had this thing, that a centerfold that you could go all the way out with it. I'd never seen anything like it. I'm 11 years old. Naked women, totally naked women, beautiful women. And I felt a rush of excitement, and something in my brain lit up like a Christmas tree. But I also felt that same emotion, shame. I knew it was bad, and I knew we shouldn't be looking at these pictures, but we kept looking. Little did I know that would be the first, but not the last time I would pluck out a feather for worms. By the time I was 15, I was a full-fledged drug addict. Not cocaine or pot or anything like that. My drug of choice was within my own brain. Dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. I learned that by combining porn and masturbation, that I could access chemicals in my brain at any time for any reason to keep the shame at bay, at least for a little while. Snapshot number 3. This snapshot's a little fuzzy. It's out of focus. I was 12 years old. I was transitioning from Cub Scouts to Boy Scouts, and our parents were having a meeting, and a group of older boys took us down into a ditch. And I told my dad later that the boys beat us up. But that's not true. The truth is, it's very foggy. The memory is. It's there, but it's foggy. It's not clear. But something sexual happened to us, me and another kid. And I know that because whenever I thought about it, I felt tremendous shame again. And that changed me. Snapshot number 4. I'm about 12 again, and my mother walks in on me in my room and another little boy from the neighborhood, about my age, acting out what we saw in the magazines. I was so mortified that I climbed out a window and ran away. Running away was going to the end of the block. I didn't know where to go. And I remember crying, sitting on my bike over and over again, saying, "I'm not gay. I'm not gay." My mom called my dad, and when he got home, he did what a good dad would do. He spanked me. That's not what needed to happen. By now you understand what I felt. I couldn't escape. Snapshot number 5. Not long after that, I'm spending the night with a friend, and as I lay there trying to go to sleep, he reaches around and puts his hand down my underwear. Not once, not twice, and not 10 times, over and over and over again all night long. I told him to please stop. As I laid there, why does this happen to me? Did I do something to make him think he wanted me to? I wanted him to do that? Why was this happening? I laid there in overwhelming shame. I told his mom, and he got in trouble. And actually, Doug went on to become a drug addict, a promiscuous gay man, and he died of AIDS at 26. Snapshot number 6. I'm in junior high, and we're having 50s day. You dress in the style of the 50s. I wore jeans, a white t-shirt with the sleeves rolled up. And as I was walking out the door, my mom hands me a pair of sunglasses. Wear these. When I got to school, I realized they were girl sunglasses. and I got made fun of relentlessly. And this is more of a snapshot than a collage of pictures. My mom would tell me that I would have made such a beautiful girl. I had girl hair. I had beautiful long eyelashes. She was very sexually inappropriate with me, telling me details about our parents' sex life. And I was her emotional husband. We had a very dysfunctional relationship. There was a lot of Jeff things. Locking my keys in the car. No one else on the planet did that. That was a Jeff thing. Losing my coat, Jeff thing. Spilling milk, Jeff thing. Jeff thing, Jeff thing. By 14 years old, I was so smothered in shame that I couldn't think straight. I was a screw up, and I always would be. I was obviously broken because I couldn't stop looking at porn, and because of all these weird things, maybe I was gay. I was depressed and at times even thought of suicide. Snapshot number 7. This is less of a snapshot and more of a PowerPoint presentation. I fell in love for the first time. Puppy love. Puppy love is real to puppies. We were puppies. Her name was Teresa, and we became very sexually active. And our relationship was incredibly dysfunctional. And from 16 to 21, I can't even count the girls. I would become sexually active with them, grow bored with them, and then emotionally destroy them in the process. I used to quote an old blues song, "You were just another notch on my guitar." I knew this behavior was wrong and very hurtful, and yet I still did it, and I didn't know why. And I felt, imagine that, shame. It wasn't until years later in therapy that I began to understand that I was trying to prove to my dad that I wasn't gay, and I also hated my mom, so I was punishing these girls for simply being female. And even they seemed to see right through me. One of the girls who I was sexually active with one night asked me, "Do you ever think that you're gay? What are people seeing in me?" Snapshot number 8. This picture is one of pure horror. I don't know if anyone has ever experienced something like this in this room, but I'm sitting in homeroom in high school and realized that I'd left a porn magazine laying on the table in the dining room. The entire day I walked around in terror, wondering what my parents were going to say when I got home. By this time, I was addicted to porn. Biochemically addicted to porn. I had my own stash under the bed, and I graduated from Playboys when I was 11. This was hardcore stuff. When I got home, I found the magazine on my bed, and neither one of my parents ever said a word about it. Surprisingly, this frustrated me greatly. Even then, I realized I had a problem, but my parents were not equipped, as most parents aren't, as most people aren't, to talk with me about it or help me. So I felt more shame. Snapshot number 9. This is a picture I've never talked about and I never showed anyone. It exposes me for what I was, a fraud and a pretender. When I was 19 years old, I had a sexual experience with a friend and his girlfriend. We had a threesome. It was her idea, but she wanted to watch. So there was things that happened between me and this other guy. The shame was starting to erode my willingness to live. Something had to give. If you've noticed in all these snapshots, I've never mentioned Jesus. He was there, of course, but I wasn't aware of him until snapshot number 10. I was raised in a nominal Christian home, went to church sometimes, but Christianity wasn't really lived out. When I was 12, I was in church on Sunday morning, and the pastor was, it was the 17th verse of Just As I Am, and he's saying, "I know there's one more, there's one more." And I just thought, man, my parents would be so proud of me if I went down. So I raised my hand. I repeated his prayer. I walked an aisle. I signed a card. I got baptized right then and there. They dunk you right there. And was given a little Bible, and the little old lady pinched my cheek. And the guy put his arm around me, and he said, "This is," what's your name, kid? "Jeff." "This is Jeff. He's a brand new Christian." And everybody clapped for me. The only problem was I wasn't. I was no more a Christian than I am an NBA basketball player. I simply did a religious ritual. Nothing had changed on the inside. The caterpillar had not become a butterfly. I went to church very rarely through my teenage years, and God seemed very distant. My brother became a Christian at 16. He came home and announced at the dinner table, he's actually a pastor today, and he'll tell you this is true. He said to us, I got saved today. You're all going to hell past the mashed potatoes. This started 3 years of intense arguing between my brother and I. I was a Christian. Come on, man. I raised a hand and said a prayer and walked an aisle and signed a card and got baptized. I was a Christian. And he kept saying to me, but I see no evidence of Christ in your life. By the late teens, I would have told you I was an atheist, but I was really just mad at the God I didn't believe in. I was depressed and hopeless. I was smart enough to know if there is no God, then there is no purpose. If there is no purpose, then there is no point. So why not check out early? I knew that if there was a God, he was very unhappy with me. I was a full-fledged porn addict, and at this time I was dating a girl who was a bigger porn addict than me. We were a couple made in hell. I had these weird same-sex thoughts, and I could just see him with his arms crossed, tapping his foot. Man, I wish Jeff could get it together. There's go Jeff again. What a failure. Then one hot August night, I thought I was about to meet him face to face. I was 21 years old. I was getting gas at a gas station, going to play tennis with a friend, and I'd walked into this gas station dozens and dozens of times. I pumped the gas, and I walked to the counter to pay, and I never looked up. I walked to the counter with my wallet like this, and I look up, and a guy put a gun to my head. I had walked into an armed robbery in progress. That's quite a feat. I froze. Whenever I tell this story, I always have some junior high boy that's like, I go, you know, I would kick him in the head, and I would have done all this stuff, and I'm like, you would have peed your pants. You don't know what you're saying. I froze, and I froze in fear. That's a real thing, being frozen in fear. My feet couldn't move, and I had read somewhere that when you get shot, you don't actually feel it. There's no pain to it. So I thought he had shot me, and I thought I was dying. I finally shuffled backwards. They took my wallet and ran away. And after talking to the police, I drove back home and crawled into the bed, and my brother knocked on the door, and I said, don't you start with me. And he said, if he had pulled the trigger, where would you be? And I knew that night. I knew it. I would not have been in heaven. I didn't sleep at all that night. Something had to change. And I wasn't quite ready for church yet because those were a bunch of hypocrite people. But there's a college group, sort of like Encounter, that met on the campus of my university. And I'd been invited to go for years, and I finally got the courage to attend. Wednesday night, large room, 200 college kids, music, food, girls. I was game. A guy named Rich got up in a pair of jeans and t-shirt, very much like Pete Coco, opened his Bible, began to teach. Never heard anything like that. He taught in a way I could understand. I went every week, never missed. And then I attended a retreat in Moscow, Tennessee, not Russia. The girls were a little too sugar sweet for me. You can imagine what kind of girls I hung out with, and these were the I love Jesus. You know, I didn't mess with that at all. I didn't even know what to do with that. And the boys kind of all knew each other. So I spent a long time walking around the lake thinking about my life. And that night, Rich read this. There was a man who had two sons, and the younger of them said to the father, Father, give me the share of the property that is coming to me. And he divided the property between them. In other words, Dad, I wish you were dead so I could get my money. Not many days later, the young son gathered all he had and took a journey into the far country, and there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in the country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to the citizens of the country, who sent him into his field to feed pigs. It's a good Jewish boy sitting in a pig pen. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, but no one gave them anything. I just imagine like the pigs are all, you know, they're all at the trough, and he tries to even get down there with them, and they won't give him any food. But when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I've said this little rehearsed speech. Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer with. Father says, stop it. Shush. Bring the best robe, put it on him. Put a ring on his hand, shoes on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and now he's alive. He was lost and he was found. And Rich read that, and that's all I could think about. And it was New Year's Eve night. I came home from this retreat and went to my girlfriend's house. It was a drunken free-for-all. And I sat on the couch and people were like, you okay? What's wrong with you, man? I'm like, leave me alone. I couldn't stop thinking about this kid and the dad. And on that couch, December 31st, 1991, I came to my senses. I got it. I was the kid. This was my pig pen. I had taken the gift of my life, run off into a far country and spent it on selfish pleasures. I looked around and I thought, this is Pigpen. So on that couch, I didn't even know how to pray. I didn't know how to do anything. I just looked up at the ceiling and said, I want to come home. And that was 27 years ago. And I've never looked back. I was born again. The Holy Spirit took up residence in me. So I knew the days of looking at porn and all that stuff were over. But I was wrong. 6 months later, I quit grad school, left my job. My new group of Christian friends moved to North Carolina to work for a Christian school. And as I was leaving and everybody was praying for me and everybody was telling me, A, that I was nuts, but B, that they were really so proud of me that I was doing all this stuff, I actually stole some porn videos from a friend of mine. Nothing had changed. Except my shame and guilt were much worse. I thought Jesus healed people. Why didn't he take away these desires? Why didn't he help me? And that's where we get snapshot number 10. And this picture is precious to me. I'm sitting on a couch with a redheaded girl named Maxine. My hands are shaking. My voice is quiet. We've been friends for about a year. I'm 22 years old. And for the first time in my life, I said these words out loud to another human being. I have a problem with porn, and I think I'm gay. Her eyes twinkled and she smiled and she simply said, nope. No, you're not. She hugged me and that was it. Didn't shame me. She didn't recoil with disgust. She simply loved me. And that was a beautiful gift. And next month, me and that little redheaded girl will celebrate 26 years of marriage. I love you. She's watching. Just as I thought getting saved would solve my entire problem, I thought the fantasy of getting married would help as well. Now we get to have sex. I get to have sex anytime I want to. Is that how it works? No. But I still kept looking at porn. We decided to go to seminary. That'd do the trick. Being around all those godly guys. Woo! All those 3 years were the godly guys all around me. But something happened during that time that this table doesn't understand. Before then, this is magazines and things like that. But all of a sudden, I had the internet in my house. If I'd had a laptop or a tablet in my room when I was 16 years old, I would have failed high school. No doubt. And I went absolutely crazy. I couldn't stop. And when I say I couldn't stop, I mean I couldn't stop. I felt nuts. And one night, I was sitting in the baby's room. That's where the computer was. Baby was asleep. And I have no idea how long Maxine was standing behind me. She threatened to take the baby and go to her mother's in Atlanta. And I sat on the floor and wept hysterically. I didn't want to lose my family. All I wanted to do is walk with integrity within my house, but I couldn't seem to do it. I thought I was crazy. I did irrational things. Getting saved didn't heal me. Getting married didn't heal me. Going to seminary didn't heal me. Maybe I was broken. Maybe the promises that God has for everyone are for everyone else, but not me. This actually added a whole new level of shame to my already trembling soul. 2001, I came on staff as a pastor, a youth pastor. Now as a pastor, people looked up to me. I had to be above reproach. That'll do it. 8 years of fighting it. 8 years of white knuckling. 8 years of constant fear of being discovered. If you're a plumber and you look at porn, who cares? If you're a pastor, you lose your career, your job, your ministry, your house, your life. 8 years of sadness that I had to fake my way through. 8 years. I was always this close to a nervous breakdown, and no one knew it. No one. I went home and I told my wife it was time. I couldn't live one more day. And that's the day my life started changing. That's the first day of my recovery, and that was 12 years ago. I'm in a totally different place now, and I give glory to Jesus because of it. But it's a journey that I've taken. So let me tell you what I've done. How do you break an addiction to internet pornography? I called a number that I found for a life group, Living in Freedom Every Day. And a guy named Pete answered the phone. And with a trembling voice, I told him my situation. He didn't freak out. He just invited me to group. I remember walking into the room being literally scared out of my mind. I don't get nervous in front of people. I don't get nervous around people. I was beside myself. Around the table, there were guys that looked just like me. There's several other pastors, Greek Orthodox priest, a principal, a construction worker, normal guys. Pete began by saying, "Hi, my name is Pete. I'm a sex addict. I've been sexually sober for 5 years, 3 months, and 2 days." My jaw hit the floor. I couldn't comprehend that kind of freedom. And the guys went around the room and introduced themselves, and it was my turn. And for the first time in a group of people, I said, "Hi, my name is Jeff, and I'm a sex addict, and I struggle with same-sex thoughts sometimes too." And one of the guys said, "Welcome to the club, buddy." I was in a safe place. I could be honest. I could start my journey. That was the first thing. There's several other things that I did. I made an appointment with a psychiatrist that I knew that was a believer and got on medication for ADHD. Research shows that most people who struggle with sexual compulsivity are ADHD and have impulse control issues. And on the ADHD test, I made an A. Trust me. It's been so difficult to stand here at this lectern because I can't, it's hard. I'm usually all over the place. Squirrel. We had to make sure there was absolutely no access to porn in our house. I have no passwords. 12 years later, I have no passwords to anything. I cannot get on my wife's tablet. I can't do anything. We call it closing the windows, and we nailed them shut. I made an appointment with a counselor friend, and we began to work through my family and shame issues. And this was incredibly hard, and I cried a lot. I spent so many years trying to numb the pain that going back through this was like picking a scab. I wrote a letter to my mom, 10 pages back and front, detailing all the terrible things she did to me. It was brutal. I left it in my car, and long story short, my sunroof leaked. The heat bleached the paper nearly white. Couldn't read it. And as I sat in the car, God whispered to me, "That's what I did for your sin. Can't you forgive her for hers?" I did forgive her, and I'm glad I did because I got to sit at her bed as she was dying not long after that. I signed up to go to an intensive weekend with Dr. Mark Laser in Minnesota, 72 hours, 6 weeks of therapy in 3 days. And that's very important. I did a trauma egg where I had to walk through everything that had happened to me. And I was in a group of guys that were like, "Yeah, me too, man. Yeah, me too, man. Yeah, me too." They didn't judge me. They understood me. I learned that I had a biochemical neurological addiction to mind-altering substances within my brain. And one of the things that's so crazy is you cannot stop. It's so easy for someone who's never had an addiction to go, "Why don't you just stop?" I have a friend that just, "Why don't you just stop?" And when you can't stop, you really do think you're nuts. My wife and I made a contract to do 90 days of abstinence, no sex for 90 days. I literally needed to rewire my brain. Porn had dug such deep ruts into my brain neurochemically that I had to do a period of abstinence to rewire my brain. At day 17, I sat at the table and begged her to end our fast. I offered her a car. I offered her a couch. I offered her anything. But my sweet little wife slammed her fist on the table and said with a very evil grin, "For the first time in our marriage, I do not feel pressure to help you stay sexually pure. Too bad, buddy." I sat at the table and I cried, but we made it through that. For years, I blamed her. If she's just more available, if she's more sexual, And she would say things like, I'm not one of your little high school whores. I had to let her have her anger, and boy, did she have it. I had to start facing emotions head on instead of running with them. I literally had not dealt with strong emotions since I was 11 years old. I had to grow up, and I fell into a deep depression that lasted 2 years, but I never lost hope, even in that depression, because I knew it was good for me. I was finally feeling things. It wouldn't kill me. I told 3 of my best friends in the church. They didn't reject me and encouraged me greatly. I did not tell our senior pastor. I worked with him for 13 years. I never told him a word. He never knew anything. He wouldn't say the word porn from the pulpit, and although we know that over 50% of men in our congregations are suffering in silence, he wouldn't preach on it nor talk about it. And in 13 years, he never asked me. He didn't want to know. I had to learn to get out of the vortex. That's what I call sexual addiction, the vortex. I had learned some very dysfunctional lessons growing up, and I had to unlearn them. Patrick Carnes says there are basically 4 core beliefs of an addict. I am basically a bad, unworthy person. That was me. I got that. No one will love me as I am. If people really knew who I really am, they wouldn't love me anymore. I wouldn't be their pastor anymore. They wouldn't look up to me anymore. My needs are never going to be met if I have to depend on others. And that's why I felt so compelled to meet my own needs. And sex is my most important need. And I truly believe that. Without the outlet of porn, I would die. I had to totally relearn a biblical view of healthy sexuality. I had to understand that I used sex in a way that was inherently selfish, and that my most important needs were spiritual, not sexual. I had to deal with the fact that I'd been sexually abused, and when sexual abuse occurs, it's like dropping a rock on a mirror. And what happens is you try to put the mirror back together, and all you do is you cut your hands, and it doesn't go back together. I had to learn that God never asked us to put our mirrors back together. He offers me a whole new mirror. 2 Corinthians 5:17 came alive. If anyone is in Christ, he's a new creation. The old is gone, the new has come. And I had to deal with my shame. It was really the defining core of my identity. And I had this incredible experience where I led worship, and I felt like I didn't do a good job as always. And a friend of mine had said, where do you feel most comfortable? And I said, peaceful. I said, the beach. He said, okay, next time that happens, go in a room, lie down on the floor, and walk with Jesus on the beach. And I'm just not like one of those guys. I'm like, that's goofy, man. I'm not going to do that. But I did it. I actually went and found this. It was like a children's room, and it had a little table. And so I laid on the table, turned off the lights, and I laid there, and I said, okay, I'm going to walk with you on a beach. I can't describe what happened in that room, but God met me there. Like it was a holy place. And that was the beginning of me understanding that I am not my shame. My identity is not my shame. I love the picture of the father standing on tiptoes, looking over the horizon for the sun. But what really got me about this story was that he ran. Men in that culture don't run. But he ran out to meet his son and walking back into town. Can you imagine how shameful it would have been for the son to walk back through town? All the people knew what he had done, but the dad walked with him, put new shoes, new ring, new robe, which signified the identity of a son, covering his shame. There is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. I had to deal honestly with my same-sex thoughts. I'd never been attracted to other guys. I didn't have that. But what happens when you watch a lot of porn is there's a thing in your brain called mirror neurons. And you literally, if you watch somebody play tennis, your body, your muscles will actually start mimicking that, even though you're watching it. You may not, it's unconscious. And so I had to, as I got out of that, all of the porn, a lot of that went away. And I remember saying to Maxine one time, I'm not gay, I'm just broken. And she smiled and she said, I've known that all along. I'm glad you're finally figuring it out. I was trying to meet legitimate needs for male affirmation and friendship in illegitimate ways. We're only as sick as our secrets. And once that part of my life wasn't secret anymore, the power seemed to be taken out of it. And that's really what you have to do. In any addiction, if you think about a whack-a-mole, remember at the fair, you have the whack-a-mole thing like that. And what people do is they go, okay, it pops over here. Okay, I'll do that. I'll do that. I'll do that. I'll do that. And the whole time they miss the point. The point is you have to reach around behind the machine and unplug it. I had to find the plug. And all the things that I just talked about was a plug. So I've been in recovery for over 12 years. I've relapsed several times, but I keep getting back up. Today, I've been sexually sober for 884 days. God has given me my feathers back. I can fly. I can sing. Maxine and I have a relationship I never thought possible. My kids and I have a relationship I never thought possible. I still go to group. My windows are still closed. I'm still walking in honesty. I'm a better husband and a father and a pastor. And most of all, I am walking with integrity of heart in my house. So each one of you have been giving a feather, and I want you to hold it in your hand. In a room this big, I know something about you. Some of you are struggling with porn, and you're afraid to tell anyone. Some of you have struggled with same-sex attraction. Some of you understand shame and not feeling like you're enough. Some of you understand depression and anxiety. We're all tempted to meet needs in illegitimate ways. So I just want you to think about, what are you trading your feathers for? And then corporately, the church is weak. The Church of America is weak. And one of the reasons why is because we have so many men who should be leading, but they're so wrapped up in sin and shame and guilt that they can't lead. And so one of the things that has to happen is that we need to rise up the generation that seeks. And so part of the 12-step program is the 12th step is to turn around and reach back and say, come on, let's go. And that's what I'm doing. And by the end of the year, I will finish a certification called a sexual addiction treatment provider. And I'm turning around and I'm grabbing other guys and I'm saying, come on, you can do this. And so I'm doing that individually, and I have a heart to do it in the church, because I think that's one of the things that's going to turn the church around and lead to revival. I appreciate you guys listening. I really do. This was not easy for me to do. And all the way down here, I prayed. I was not going to let Eric record it. But people need to know that Jesus is enough. People need to know that he did a work in my life and he can do a work in yours, or your friends, or your sons, or whoever you know. So let me pray. Father, right now, in the name of Jesus, the High King, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, Lord, we come to you and realize that we are just men. We are finite, we are fragile, we are sinful, and our hearts are attracted to all kinds of junk. God, help us to see that it's not about white knuckling, it's not about trying harder, it's about trusting your finished work. God, it's about resting in my identity, not as a shame-filled sinner, but as a son. And most of all, Lord, help us to always understand that you get the glory in every story like this. We pray this in Jesus' name. Everybody said? Amen. Amen. Thank you, guys.
Jeff has some discussion questions he's passed out too, and you're welcome to talk about those. They're on your notes page if you're watching this live, and you can have those just as discussion for your reflection. And just take some time to share with each other and talk with each other. And Jeff, I'm proud of you, just standing up and doing that. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. My question